CBS NewsHour Politico Democratic Debate. Now, live from Los Angeles, Judy Woodruff.
Welcome back. A quick reminder of the rules for this debate. Each candidate has 1 minute and 15 seconds to answer direct questions from the moderators, and 45 seconds to answer rebuttal and follow-up questions. Tonight's podium order on the stage was determined by an average of recent polls. And let's begin. To the candidates. Last night at this hour, the House of Representatives voted for only the third time in American history to impeach a president. Every one of you was in favor of this action. But unlike 1974 and President Nixon, congressional Democrats have so far not convinced a strong majority of Americans to support impeachment of President Trump. Why do you think that is, and what can you say or do differently in the coming weeks to persuade more Americans that this is the right thing to do? I want to ask all of you to respond, but to begin with Vice President Biden.
You know, Judy, it was a constitutional necessity for the House to act as it did. And, Trump's response to suggest that only half of the American people want to see him thrown out of office now, I find is dumbing down the presidency beyond what I even thought he would do. Is any wonder that if you look at the international polling that's been done, that the Chinese leader is rated above the American president, or that Vladimir Putin congratulated him, saying stand fast, and in fact, it was a mistake to impeach him. We need to restore the integrity of the presidency, of the office of the presidency. And it's about time we get that underway. My job, and I think the job of all of us up here, is to, in fact, well, that's not true. Some are going to be actually voting in the Senate. But my job is to just go out and make the case why he doesn't deserve to be president of the United States for another 4 years.
Senator Sanders, why do you think more people are not in support of impeachment, and what else can you do?
Well, Judy, what I would say is that we have a president who is a pathological liar. We have a president who is running the most corrupt administration in the modern history of this country. And we have a president who is a fraud, because during this campaign, he told working people one thing, and he ended up doing something else. I believe, and I will personally be doing this in the coming weeks and months, is making the case that we have a president who has sold out the working families of this country, who wants to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid after he promised he would not do that, and who has documentedly lied thousands of times since he is president. And the case to be made is, yeah, certainly I disagree with Trump on virtually all of his policies. But what conservatives, I think, understand is that we cannot have a president with that temperament who is dishonoring the presidency of the United States.
Senator Warren, why do you think more Americans don't agree that this is the right thing to do, and what more can you say?
So I see this as a constitutional moment. Last night, the president was impeached, and everyone now in the Senate has taken a constitutional oath to uphold our Constitution, and that doesn't mean loyalty to an individual. It doesn't mean loyalty to a political party. It means loyalty to our country, and that vote will play out over the next several weeks. But the way I see this is we've now seen the impact of corruption, and that's what's clearly on the stage in 2020, is how we are going to run against the most corrupt president in living history. This president has made corruption originally his argument that he would drain the swamp. And yet he came to Washington, broke that promise, and has done everything he can for the wealthy and the well-connected, from tax breaks to ambassadorships. We have to prosecute the case against him, and that means we need a candidate for president who can draw the sharpest distinction between the corruption of the Trump administration and a Democrat who is willing to get out and fight, not for the wealthy and well-connected, but to fight for everyone else. That's why I'm in this race.
Senator Klobuchar. Senator Klobuchar, what argument can you make to persuade more Americans this is the right thing?
Let me make the case to the American people. As a wise judge said, the president is not king in America. The law is king. And what James Madison once said when he was speaking out at the Constitutional Convention, and by the way, I think he's a pretty good size for a president. He was 5'4". And what he said the reason that we have these impeachment articles in the Constitution, that the provisions are in there, is because he feared that a president would betray the trust of the American people for a foreign power. That is what happened here. Watergate, this is a global Watergate. In the case of Watergate, a paranoid president facing election looked for dirt on a political opponent. He did it by getting people to break in. This president did it by calling a foreign leader to look for dirt on a political opponent. And I would make this case. As we face this trial in the Senate, if the president claims that he is so innocent, then why doesn't he have all the president's men testify? Richard Nixon had his top people testify. We should be hearing from Mulvaney, who is the one, under oath, witnesses have said that Mulvaney is the one that said, okay, we're going to withhold this aid to a fledgling democracy to get dirt on a political opponent. We should hear from Bolton, who told his own staff to go see a lawyer after they met with the president. That is the case. If President Trump thinks that he should not be impeached, he should be not scared to put forward his own witnesses.
Mayor Buttigieg, what additional argument can you make to the American people?
At the end of the day, this is beyond public opinion. This is beyond polls. This is beyond politics. The president left the House with no choice. And I think a lot of us are watching this process, watching Washington go through the motions, and not expecting much but a foregone conclusion when it gets to the Senate. But we cannot give in to that sense of helplessness, because that's what they want. They want us to be taken in by that cynicism to where we give up on the process altogether. Meanwhile, their allies are laughing all the way to the bank as we see policies that let giant corporations, some of which made billions in profits, pay not just zero, but as we've recently learned, negative taxes, all while they block policies that would actually boost wages for working Americans. Here's the good news. It's up to us. No matter what happens in the Senate, it is up to us in 2020. This is our chance to refuse to be taken in by the helplessness, to refuse and reject the cynicism. That is what this presidential election is about. It is what my campaign is about. Our opportunity in 2020, no matter what happens in Washington, as a country, to change the course of this nation for the better.
Mr. Yang, what more?
I'm over here.
Mr. Yang, what more can you say
Judy.
to the American people?
Judy,
I'm sorry, Mr. Steyer. I'm sorry.
Well, let me remind everyone that I'm the person who started the need to impeach movement over 2 years ago. Because I believe what counts here is actually the American people's opinion. Over 8.5 million signed that petition and dragged Washington into the idea that actually the most corrupt president in American history, not a question of political expediency, it's not a question of political tactics, it's a question of right and wrong. So now when we look what's going on, I actually agree with Senator Klobuchar. The question here is, if we want the American people to understand what's going on, we need to have the administration officials testify on TV so we can judge. The court that counts here is the court of public opinion. The American people deserve to see the truth of these administration officials testifying under oath so we can make up our mind. If we want Republican senators to do the right thing, we need their constituents to see the truth on TV and tell them, get rid of this guy or we'll get rid of you. That's what I believe in. I'm a believer in the grassroots as an outsider, getting the American people's voice to count. That's who I trust, and that's who I trust now.
Mr. Yang.
It's clear why Americans can't agree on impeachment. We're getting our news from different sources, and it's making it hard for us even to agree on basic facts. Congressional approval rating, last I checked, was something like 17%, and Americans don't trust the media networks to tell them the truth. The media networks didn't do us any favors by missing a reason why Donald Trump became our president in the first place. If you turn on cable network news today, you would think he's our president because of some combination of Russia, racism, Facebook, Hillary Clinton, and emails all mixed together. But Americans around the country know different. We blasted away 4 million manufacturing jobs that were primarily based in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri. I just left Iowa. We blasted 40,000 manufacturing jobs there. The more we act like Donald Trump is the cause of all of our problems, the more Americans lose trust that we can actually see what's going on in our communities and solve those problems. What we have to do is we have to stop being obsessed over impeachment, which unfortunately strikes many Americans like a ball game where you know what the score is going to be, and start actually digging in and solving the problems that got Donald Trump elected in the first place. We have to take every opportunity to present a new positive vision for the country, a new way forward to help beat him in 2020, because make no mistake, he'll be there at the ballot box for us to defeat.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Let's turn now to an issue that is on the minds of all Americans, and that is the economy. Senator Sanders, today the House of Representatives voted for a new bipartisan trade agreement among the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It was supported by union-friendly leaders like Speaker Nancy Pelosi and big labor groups like the AFL-CIO. They say it is going to be a big job creator. Senator, my question is, will you support this deal? And if not, why not?
Judy, you're talking to somebody who, unlike some of my colleagues here, voted against NAFTA, voted against PNCR with China, two agreements that cost us over 4 million decent paying jobs. Now, I don't agree with your statement that people think this is going to be a great job creator. This is a modest improvement over what we have right now. It would allow, hopefully, Mexican workers to organize into unions, independent unions, and be able to negotiate decent contracts. But at the end of the day, in my view, it is not going to stop outsourcing. It is not going to stop corporations from moving to Mexico, where manufacturing workers make less than $2 an hour. What we need is a trade policy that stands up for workers, stands up for farmers, and by the way, the word climate change, to the best of my knowledge, is not discussed in this new NAFTA agreement at all, which is an outrage. So no, I will not be voting for this agreement, although it makes some modest improvements.
Senator Klobuchar?
I have a different view. I'll go with my friend Sherrod Brown, who has voted against every trade agreement that's come in front of him, and he's voting for this, and I am too. And the reason I am voting for it is that I believe that we have a change with this agreement. I would not have voted for the agreement that President Trump put forward, but we've got better labor standards, better environmental standards, and a better deal when it comes to the pharmaceutical provision, which I also oppose. 95% of our customers are outside of our borders, and we have to make sure that we have trade agreements that are more fair, because if we can encourage work made in America, every time you hold something in your hand that says made in America, it is the ingenuity of our workers. It is the quality of a product. It is the equality of our workers. And it is the hopes and dreams of the American people. I think this agreement, while Senator Sanders is correct, there are some issues with it, is much better than the one originally proposed. And for those farmers in the Midwest, and for those people that have been hurt by the fact that we will not have a trade segment with Mexico and with Canada and the United States, I think that this is a much better deal.
All right, we can pull some of I see some other hands up. I want to move to the next question, and you can bring in, I think, your points with this. But this one I'm going to initially address to Vice President Biden, and that is the overall U.S. economy right now looks strong. The unemployment rate is at historic lows. Unemployment among African Americans is down. The markets are booming. Wages, while not growing as much as many would like, they're still doing about as well as they were in the Obama-Biden era. My question to you, Mr. Vice President, is what is your argument to the voter watching this debate tonight who may not like everything President Trump does, but they really like this economy and they don't know why they should make a change.
Well, I don't think they really do like the economy. Go back and talk to the old neighbors in the middle-class neighborhoods you grew up in. The middle class is getting killed. The middle class is getting crushed. And the working class has no way up as a consequence of that. You have, for example, farmers in the Midwest, 40% of them couldn't pay their bills last year. You have most Americans, if they received a bill for $400 or more, they'd have to sell something or borrow the money. The middle class is behind the eight ball. We have to make sure that they have an even shot. We have to eliminate a significant number of these god-awful tax cuts that were given to the very wealthy. We have to invest in education. We have to invest in healthcare. We have to invest in those things that make a difference in the lives of middle-class people so they can maintain their standard of living. That's not being done. And the idea that we're not growing. The wealthy, very wealthy are growing. Ordinary people are not growing. They are not happy with where they are, and that's why we must change this presidency now.
Mayor Buttigieg, is that your assessment?
Yes, where I live, folks aren't measuring the economy by how the Dow Jones is looking, measuring the economy by how they're doing. When you're doing the bills at the end of the month at your kitchen table, and you find that even if your wages have gone up, it's not nearly going as fast as the cost of health and housing. This economy is not working for most of us, for the middle class, and I know you're only ever supposed to say middle class and not poor in politics, but we've got to talk about poverty in this country. There is not one county in the United States of America where someone working full-time at the minimum wage can afford a 2-bedroom apartment. In most places, not even a 1-bedroom apartment. The biggest problem in our economy is simple. People are not getting paid enough. That is not the result of some mysterious cosmic force. It's the result of bad policy, and we've got to change it by raising wages and empowering workers.
Mr. Yang.
GDP and corporate profits are at record highs in America today. Also at record highs, depression, financial insecurity, student loan debt, even suicides and drug overdoses. It has gotten so bad that our life expectancy as a country has declined for the last 3 years because suicides and drug overdoses have overtaken vehicle deaths for the first time in American history. The fact is, this unemployment rate and GDP have very little relationship with people's lived experience on the ground. If you're a recent college graduate, you have a 40% chance of doing a job that doesn't require a college degree. That doesn't show up in the headline unemployment rate, nor does all of the families that are working 2 or 3 jobs to get by.
Senator Warren, you have your hand up.
I do.
And I have a question for you.
Well, I want to ask this question.
Go ahead.
Because here's the problem. I'm proud to stand on a stage with Democrats who understand that a rising GDP, rising corporate profits is not being felt by millions of families across this country. I'm proud to stand on a stage with people who see that America's middle class is being hollowed out and that working families and poor people are being left behind. What we need to talk about, though, is why that has happened. And the answer is we've got a government that works great for those with money and doesn't work for much of anyone else. We have a government that works great for giant drug companies, just not for someone trying to fill a prescription. Works great for people who want to make money at private prisons and private detention centers at our border, just not for the people whose lives are torn apart. Works great for giant oil companies that want to drill everywhere, but not for the rest of us who see climate change bearing down upon us. And when you see a government that works great for the wealthy and the well-connected and for no one else, that is corruption, pure and simple, and we need to call it out for what it is.
I want Senator Sanders, if you would, a brief response, and then I have another question.
Look, here's the response. Trump goes around saying the economy is doing great. You know what? Real inflation accounted for wages went up last year 1.1%. That ain't great. Tonight, while 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 500,000 Americans, including 30,000 veterans, are sleeping out on the streets. Today in America, We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. More income and wealth inequality since the 1920s. We need an economy that works for working families, not just the 1%. That is what our campaign is about.
Senator Warren, I have a question for you. Every candidate on the stage has proposed tax increases on the wealthy, but you have especially ambitious plans that, apart from health care, would hike taxes an additional $8 trillion over the decade, the biggest tax increase since World War II. How do you answer top economists who say taxes of this magnitude would stifle growth and investment?
Oh, they're just wrong. Let's start with the wealth tax, the idea of a 2-cent tax on the great fortunes in this country, $50 million and above. For 2 cents, what can we do? We can invest in the rest of America. We can provide universal child care, early childhood education for every baby in this country aged 0 to 5. Universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old, and raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher. We can do even more for our public schools, for college graduates. We can cancel student loan debt. But think about the economic impact of that. You leave 2 cents with the billionaires, they're not eating more pizzas. They're not buying more cars. We invest that 2% in early childhood education and child care. That means those babies get top-notch care. It means their mamas can finish their education. It means their mamas and their daddies can take on real jobs, harder jobs, longer hours. And we can increase productivity in this country, and we can start building this economy from the ground up. That's how we build it in small towns. That's how we build it in rural America, and that's how we build it in urban America, an economy that works not for Wall Street, but that works for Main Street.
Brief responses from Mr. Steyer and Mr. Buttigieg.
So let me say that I agree with Senator Warren in much of what she says. I've been for a wealth tax for over a year. I'm in favor of undoing all the tax breaks for rich people and big corporations that this administration has put through. And in addition, I've talked about equilibrating the taxes on passive investment income, which would allow us to cut taxes for 95% of Americans by 10%. But there's something else going on here that I think is really important, and that's this. We know Mr. Trump's going to run on the economy. I built a business over 30 years from scratch. We're going to have to take him on the economy in terms of growth as well as economic justice. We're going to have to be able to talk about growth, prosperity across the board for everyone in America. My experience building a business, understanding how to make that happen, means I can go toe-to-toe with Mr. Trump and take him down on the economy and expose him as a fraud and a failure. And I think that's different from the other people on this stage. I think we need a different, unconventional way of attacking a different, unconventional president who actually went after the best prepared candidate in American history and beat her.
Mayor Buttigieg.
We're also right now, I think we're being offered a false choice. You either have to go all the way to the extreme or it's business as usual. Yes, we must deliver big ideas. And yes, taxes on wealthy individuals and on corporations are going to have to go up. We can also be smart about the promises we're making. Make sure they're promises that we can keep without the kind of taxation that economists tell us could hurt the economy. It's why, for example, I propose that we make college free for 80% of Americans, but it doesn't have to be free for the top. If you're in that top 10%, how about you pay your own tuition and we save those dollars for something else that we could spend them on that would make a big difference, whether it's infrastructure, childcare, housing, health. On issue after issue, we've got to break out of the Washington mindset that measures the bigness of an idea by how many trillions of dollars it adds to the budget, or the boldness of an idea by how many fellow Americans it can antagonize.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back in 2 minutes with questions from my fellow moderators.